In 2018, the United States federal government determined that a specific fat had been killing 90,000 Americans every year. That fat was not butter. It was not lard. It was the industrially processed vegetable oil the American Heart Association had been recommending as the healthy alternative since 1961. The organization that issued that recommendation had received $1.7 million from the company that manufactured the replacement product 13 years before the recommendation was made. Right now, people who never heard that sequence are buying the bottle with the heart check logo. By the time this is over, you will know what a researcher at the National Institutes of Health found on magnetic tapes in a residential basement. Data from the largest randomized controlled trial ever run on this question, set aside for more than 40 years. And how anyone in this country can legally return to the fat their ancestors ate for 2 million years with no exemption required, no license, no permission from the institution that buried it. The American Heart Association had $1,100 in its operating budget. Then Procter & Gamble, the manufacturer of Crisco hydrogenated vegetable shortening, donated $1.7 million. 13 years later, the AHA recommended Crisco. Archaeological sites at Kubi Fora and Olduvai Gorge, dated to 2 million years ago, show deliberate stone tool marks on large animal bones placed with precision to access the marrow cavity. Fat was not a byproduct of the hunt. It was the objective. Researchers analyzing the human genome have documented that specific genetic regions were modified across human evolution to enable a fat-rich diet, the same regions that in chimpanzees remain configured for a sugar-rich diet. That divergence is not a dietary philosophy. It is written into your cells. Your brain is 60% fat by dry weight. The majority of that structural fat is saturated. Your hormones, testosterone, cortisol, and the precursor to vitamin D are synthesized from saturated fat as their primary raw material. The fat-soluble vitamins your body cannot produce, vitamins A, D, E, and K, require dietary fat to cross the intestinal wall. Without fat present in a meal, you absorb a fraction of the nutrients that meal contains. Researchers who reconstructed ancestral hominid dietary patterns, published in the British Journal of Nutrition in 2010, estimated that early human diets delivered approximately 35% of calories from fat, with saturated fat contributing roughly 7.5% of total energy. The ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 fatty acids in that diet approached 2:1. In the average American diet today, that ratio is 10:1. That shift did not happen because humans chose it. It happened because the oils that drove it upward became the dominant cooking fats in the food supply following guidelines issued in 1961 by a committee that included the scientists whose hypothesis those guidelines confirm. A 2010 meta-analysis published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition followed 347,747 people across 21 studies for up to 23 years. Finding: no significant evidence that dietary saturated fat is associated with increased risk of coronary heart disease, stroke, or cardiovascular disease. The pooled relative risk for coronary heart disease was 1.07, statistically indistinguishable from no effect. A 2024 systematic review and meta-analysis of 9 randomized controlled trials reached the same conclusion. Reduction in saturated fat cannot be recommended to prevent cardiovascular disease or mortality. No significant difference in cardiovascular death. No significant difference in death from all causes. Combined, more than 360,000 people, multiple decades of follow-up, no survival benefit from the recommendation that reshaped the American food supply. If the evidence cannot confirm the mortality benefit after 360,000 people and 6 decades of study, a reasonable person might ask what the original evidence actually showed and who was in the room when the conclusion was made official. In 1953, Ancel Keys, a physiologist at the University of Minnesota, published an analysis linking dietary fat to heart disease mortality. The data came from 6 countries. There were 22 countries with available data at the time. He published 6. The countries whose data disrupted the pattern, France among them, which consumed high levels of saturated fat while recording low rates of heart disease, did not appear in the published analysis. The data from Greece was collected during Lent, the 40-day religious fasting period when Greek Orthodox Christians eliminate animal products. That seasonally imposed reduction in fat consumption was recorded as representative of how Greeks ate year-round. In 1961, Keys secured a seat on the Nutrition Committee of the American Heart Association. That same year, with Keys as co-author, the AHA issued its first-ever dietary guidelines. They identified saturated fat, defined in the document as the fat in whole milk, cream, butter, cheese, and meat, as the primary dietary cause of heart attacks. Crisco and Wesson oil appeared as recommended alternatives. The advisory noted, without acting on the observation, that a considerable quantity of the fats consumed in the United States were of the hydrogenated type. The trans fat problem was acknowledged in the same document that recommended the trans fat containing product. The AHA had received $1.7 million from Procter & Gamble. Procter & Gamble manufactured Crisco. Keys held a seat on the committee. The committee recommended Crisco. No randomized controlled trial of the diet heart hypothesis had been completed when those guidelines were issued. In 1967, the Sugar Research Foundation commissioned a literature review from researchers at Harvard University's School of Public Health. The foundation paid the equivalent of $50,000 in today's money, set the review's objective, selected which articles would be included, and received drafts before publication. The review was published in the New England Journal of Medicine. It concluded there was no doubt that the only dietary intervention required to prevent coronary heart disease was to reduce saturated fat and substitute polyunsaturated fat. Studies linking sugar to heart disease were subjected to aggressive methodological criticism. Studies implicating fat were not. The Sugar Research Foundation's funding and role were not disclosed. The New England Journal of Medicine did not require financial disclosure until 1984. Who decided that the fat humans consumed for 2 million years was the primary cause of the 20th century's leading killer? And who was positioned to benefit when that decision was made official? The fat that replaced butter and lard was Crisco. Cottonseed oil, previously classified as industrial waste, hardened through hydrogenation into a solid fat that resembled lard at room temperature. Procter & Gamble launched it commercially in 1911. Early advertisements described it as more healthful than any animal fat. No clinical evidence supported that claim. No regulatory body required any. Hydrogenation created something that had never existed in the human food supply in meaningful quantities: industrial trans fatty acids. They raise low-density lipoprotein cholesterol. They lower high-density lipoprotein cholesterol. They promote systemic inflammation. As early as 1956, 5 years before the AHA guidelines, there were published suggestions in the scientific literature that trans fatty acids might be contributing to the increase in coronary artery disease. Those concerns were not addressed. By the 1980s, Activist campaigns had driven fast food chains to switch from beef tallow to partially hydrogenated vegetable oil almost overnight. In 2006, the federal government estimated that artificial trans fat caused up to 250,000 heart attacks and 50,000 deaths per year. In 2018, the Food and Drug Administration formally banned partially hydrogenated oils. The FDA estimated the ban would prevent 90,000 premature deaths annually. The Minnesota coronary experiment ran from 1968 to 1973. It was the largest double-blind, randomized controlled trial ever conducted to test the diet-heart hypothesis directly, enrolling 9,423 participants in state mental hospitals and nursing homes across Minnesota. Researchers replaced saturated fat with corn oil and corn oil margarine. Serum cholesterol fell by 13.8% in the intervention group. Heart attack rates did not fall. Survival did not improve. Among participants older than 65, each 30 milligram per deciliter reduction in serum cholesterol was associated with a 22% higher risk of death. The trial concluded in 1973. The full raw data set was not published. In 2011, Christopher Ramsden, a researcher at the National Institutes of Health, tracked down Robert France, the son of one of the study's principal investigators, Ivan France, a colleague of Ancel Keys. Robert France found the raw data on magnetic tapes in his mother's basement. Ramsden's team spent 4 years analyzing it. Their findings were published in the British Medical Journal on April 12, 2016. The data had been in a residential basement for more than 40 years. No law required its publication. It was simply not submitted. The results that failed to confirm the hypothesis were the results that did not reach print. It is early morning. The light through the window is pale and unhurried. There is a ceramic crock near the stove. You lift the lid. Inside is rendered beef tallow, pale yellow, smooth, carrying a faint mineral scent that has nothing in common with the sharp chemical edge of heated industrial oil. You press a spoon into the surface. It yields. It will not smoke until it reaches nearly 250 degrees Celsius. It will not oxidize on your counter between uses. It requires no factory upstream of your kitchen to exist. A spoonful goes into the cast iron pan. It melts without sound, spreading evenly across the surface. No chemical smell as the temperature rises. When the eggs reach the pan, the whites set immediately at the edges, crisping gold. Nothing sticks. Nothing burns unevenly. You eat without reading a label because there is no label. There is no bottle. There is no deodorization step, no bleaching process, no antioxidant package added at the industrial stage to prevent rancidity before the product reaches a shelf 1,000 miles away. The fat was rendered from an animal that ate grass. The omega-6 to omega-3 ratio approaching 2:1, the ratio your cell membranes were shaped across geological time to receive, is a consequence of what the animal ate, not a formulation decision made in a laboratory. You wash the pan. You replace the lid. The fat will still be there tomorrow without degrading, without refrigeration, without an expiration date printed by a manufacturer whose interest in your continued purchase is structurally identical to its interest in your continued reliance. The industrialization of dietary fat was not driven by the discovery that animal fat was harmful. It was driven by the discovery that cottonseed oil, a textile industry waste product, could be chemically transformed into something that looked like lard, cost a fraction as much to produce, and required a factory, a patent, and a recurring consumer purchase that rendered lard commercially obsolete. Continuity, the unpatentable kind. No law in the United States prohibits the purchase or consumption of animal fat. Beef tallow, lard, and butter are legal in every state. No exemption required. No application filed. The barrier between most Americans and the fat their metabolic architecture was shaped to process is not legal. It is a belief installed by 60 years of guidelines issued by an organization whose transformation into a national institution was funded by the world's largest manufacturer of the replacement product. The Weston A. Price Foundation has operated since 1999, maintaining a national network of local chapters and a publicly searchable farm directory connecting consumers directly to producers supplying pastured lard, grass-fed beef tallow, and traditionally produced butter. No loophole needed. No exemption required. Nina Teicholz spent nearly a decade reviewing the original source documents behind the diet heart hypothesis. Her 2014 book, The Big Fat Surprise, published by Simon & Schuster, documented the selective country data, the Lenten collection period in Greece, and the financial architecture connecting the AHA to the vegetable oil industry. She subsequently founded the Nutrition Coalition, which has formally submitted peer-reviewed evidence to the United States Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee. That testimony is public record. Small farms and independent butchers across the country sell raw beef fat directly to consumers through farmers markets and online direct sales at a typical cost of $2 to $5 per pound. The rendering process requires one piece of equipment, a heavy pot. Low heat, 3 to 4 hours, strain through cheesecloth into a glass jar. The finished tallow is shelf-stable at room temperature for weeks without refrigeration, without preservatives, and without degradation. 1 pound of raw fat yields approximately 3/4 of a pound of finished cooking fat at a cost competitive with any premium oil on the market. The Weston A. Price Foundation's website carries a searchable farm directory by state. Local harvest lists producers nationwide. The farmers market in most American cities has a butcher or livestock producer who will sell the raw material, often at minimal cost because it would otherwise be discarded. The barrier was never technical. It was never legal. It was a sequence, a donation, a committee seat, a data set assembled from 6 of 22 available countries, an undisclosed $50,000 payment to Harvard, and 40 years of trial data sitting on magnetic tapes in a residential basement, while the guidelines built on the hypothesis, those tapes refuted, continued to shape every school lunch program, every hospital dietary protocol, and every bottle on the cooking oil shelf with a heart check logo on its label. The fat humans spent 2 million years building bodies to process was replaced, not by science, but by a $1.7 million donation and a committee seat. And the replacement killed 90,000 Americans every year until the government banned it in 2018. 10 years from now, the heart check logo will still be on the bottle. People who never heard this sequence will still be buying it. You will have a ceramic crock near your stove. The fat will melt without sound. The food will do what food has done for 2 million years, and you will feel something most people in that grocery aisle have never been given the information to access. If this opens something for you, if you want to understand the next system built the same way, with the same structure of financial proximity and buried evidence, subscribe so you do not miss what we uncover next. Share this with someone who is still buying the bottle with the logo and does not know where that logo came from.